I think the first thing Congress needs to do is what it has started doing, which is learn the facts, discover what exactly went on. We have seen, it seems almost every day, we get more and more facts, and it gets uglier and uglier. We know that the IRS has admitted to deliberately targeting for special scrutiny conservative groups, Tea Party groups, pro-life groups, pro-Israel groups, Jewish groups. It's interesting, if you look at that collection of groups, that's not typically a collection that is lumped together. And I would suggest there is only one characteristic that unifies all those groups, and that is that they are perceived as political enemies by the Obama White House. They are perceived as advancing policy agendas that are contrary to the agenda of this White House. And the fact that they were subjected to special scrutiny, look, this scandal and all of the scandals swirling about really combine two things. One, a willingness to use the machinery of the federal government as a tool and a partisan cudgel against your political enemies. And number two, a really sad willingness to dissemble and mislead the American people. And that was wrong when Richard Nixon did it, and it's every bit as wrong when the Obama administration does it. Now, I think there is need for a great deal of additional scrutiny because we learned at first that they were targeting it. They admitted that. We have also learned that they flat out lied to Congress. They went to Congress and said, no, we weren't targeting conservatives, we weren't targeting Tea Party group, when senior leadership at the IRS knew that was directly, objectively false. We also know that information made it up the food chain quite a bit. We know that it made it to senior political appointees at the Department of Treasury, to the General Counsel of Treasury, to the Deputy Secretary of Treasury, who are senior political appointees. And I'd be curious, there's some, it's a weird game in Washington, where reporters are playing and saying, well, we need to see if we can uncover a smoking gun. We need to see if there's an email, Dear IRS, please target conservatives, signed Barack Obama. And all of these reporters breathless saying, well, we still don't have direct evidence of the president and the White House being involved. Well, number one, how many of y'all are in business? I'm curious. If in your business was, say, grossly negligent, and say, dug a pit full of acid, say, outside of a school, and your general counsel was informed of that, and your chief operating officer was informed of that, do you think it would be a very effective argument in the litigation that would follow that, as CEO, you didn't know about that? It's utterly absurd. Look, once senior political officials have been notified, including the Deputy Secretary of Treasury, the General Counsel of Treasury, the White House counsel, the president is on notice because one of two things has happened. Either they told him and he's on actual notice, or number two, they very deliberately didn't tell him because they're endeavoring to protect him from knowledge of what's happening. But what we do know is once they knew, they didn't do a thing to stop it. They didn't stop the targeting. It was an election year. And they certainly didn't correct the falsehoods that were being told to Congress. And so this whole game of we got to figure out what the White House knew, what we knew right now as senior political officials allowed the misconduct to continue. But secondly, the whole game looking for a direct instruction from the White House misses the way things are done in post-Watergate. There's no need for a direct instruction. Now, one simply wonders, who will rid me of this cleric? When the president stands up and blasts the Supreme Court for Citizens United in front of all of Congress, when the president goes and blasts these Tea Party groups and says, you need to go and look at them. It's not complicated that those in the trenches, look, if there's one thing those who work professionally in Washington know how to do, it's to survive when there's a political agenda at times. And those marching orders were given every day over the televisions, over the newspapers, on the explicit agenda of this administration. And indeed, we've got several Democratic senators who wrote letters asking the IRS to do this, and people are talking about smoking guns. These are on official letterhead with their signatures at the bottom. I don't know how it gets much more smoky than that. So the question of what we can do, I think we need to track down who knew what, when they knew it, what they did to correct what's going on. Look, when Lois Lerner pleads the Fifth, that's a problem.
After she declared innocence, right?
One of the problems is she either needs to fire her defense lawyer or actually study how one pleads the Fifth. But more fundamentally, by the way, I would not encourage any of you to emulate that. If you have tax troubles, I would not encourage you to say at the IRS, I've done nothing wrong, but I refuse to answer any questions. That's not a winning strategy. And I think we need to find out also why the IRS commissioner went 157 times to the White House. I got to tell you, I've worked in the White House. I think there are a lot of people in this room who've worked in the White House. That's bizarre. I mean, in the same period, the IRS commissioner went to the Bush White House once. Once versus 157 times. That is utterly bizarre. The IRS commissioner was there nearly 3 times as often as Eric Holder was. He was there 62 times. The IRS commissioner was there 157 times, more than any member of the cabinet. I don't know the historical numbers.
It's really good fantasy football that Obama needs.
I would venture, I would be astonished if that were not orders of magnitude more frequent than any IRS commissioner in any administration since the creation of the IRS. And the explanation so far, well, the explanation was actually very revealing when the IRS commissioner is asked, and his answer is, well, I went for the Easter egg roll. Apparently we've had 157 Easters. I know it seemed like a long time with Obama in office, but I'm pretty sure that's an exaggeration. All right, so that's a long answer.